West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Betsy, I want to start with the new development from the January 6th committee. The panel has spoken with former Attorney General Bill Barr. We heard from the chairman a moment ago. Here's what another member of the committee, Congressman Zoe Lofgren, said a short time ago on MSNBC about their talks with Barr. Take a listen.
It was not a formal, deposition. It's been some discussions that the attorneys on the staff have had with the former Attorney General, and it was done on a voluntary basis.
Betsy, what information can Barr provide to this committee?
One thing that Barr has detailed knowledge of is the extent to which the FBI investigated the wacky allegations about voter fraud that it ultimately shot down. Remember, Barr overrode a longstanding practice in DOJ, and he overrode career officials to direct the FBI to immediately investigate allegations of voter fraud right after the 2020 election. The result of that dramatic break from precedent was that the FBI was able to look into some of these truly kooky claims, was able to vet them to find out that they were indeed unserious. And then Barr was able to go public in an interview to the AP in December and say, the FBI looked into this stuff and there is no there there. That was consequential because it took out one tool that the Giuliani and Sidney Powell folks were hoping would be able to help them. They really wanted to get the FBI on board with what they were doing. They wanted the FBI to co-sign the allegations they were leveling, and Barr came in and said, it's not going to happen. The draft executive order related to seizing the voting machines echoes many of the very wacky conspiracy theories that we would assume the FBI looked into, since it was looking into the conspiracy theories that were promulgated the most broadly. I would expect that investigators on the Select Committee would be asking Barr to tell them specifics about the investigations that the FBI conducted into those conspiracy theories, as well, of course, about anything related to the way that people in the White House or outside allies of President Trump may have leaned on the Justice Department and the FBI to try to co-opt those institutions to help them in their effort to overturn the election. Barr is a wealth of knowledge. The fact that he's cooperating voluntarily is one of the most consequential gains that this committee has made in weeks.
Yeah, Joyce, I want you to pick up exactly where Betsy left off. Talk about the potential impact if former Attorney General Barr were to testify this spring when the committee's hearings are televised. Do the American people need to hear from him directly?
It's a long way to go from some voluntary conversations with committee staffers to testifying under oath, right? This is a big distance. And the question is whether Barr will be willing to bridge that gap. As a former attorney general, though, he has almost a sacred trust with the American people, an obligation to tell the truth. I think Betsy does a great job of nailing some of the areas where he can be of most help to the committee. But one of the lingering questions about Barr, who you will recall, Alicia, resigned just before Christmas, and as we're now learning, just as this executive order was apparently beginning to go around in circulation, it would be nice for the country to have an understanding of why Barr resigned when he did. The notion that he was resigning to spend more time with his family, just as the Christmas holidays were about to begin, has always rung hollow. That resignation at the end of the administration, when he would have been out of office in just a matter of weeks, has never made sense. It's now up to Barr to explain what he saw coming down the road that was so unacceptable that even Bill Barr, longtime Trump supporter who had twisted himself into pretzel-like knots to try to prevent the outcome of the Mueller report from taking a turn that would have been dangerous to the president, what did even Bill Barr see that was so bad he could no longer remain in service of the administration?
Joyce, we have Bill Barr, and then we know that the panel wants to hear from Ivanka Trump. So it really feels like we're getting closer and closer to some principal players here. They've requested she testify, a subpoena not off the table. It's a dilemma for Ivanka. That is, according to her cousin, Mary Trump, what she said a short time ago here on MSNBC. Take a listen.
Donald isn't playing the card that she's his child to protect her. He's doing that to protect himself because he knows she may indeed have potentially damning information. She's making the same calculation. What will help her in the long run? She knows that she has to come down on the right side of things, or she'll continue to, stay her father's ally, and then she'll have to see how that plays out. But she's in a very bad situation because she must understand that if Donald feels it's necessary, he will stop protecting her.
So, Joyce, with that family dynamic in mind, what would indicate to you that Ivanka is nearing a decision on how to proceed?
The statement that she put out last week after the committee required or requested her presence to speak with them was really sort of the two ships passing in the night sort of response that you don't see too often in this setting. Almost as though Ivanka Trump doesn't realize how blatantly serious this is. The Supreme Court has just diminished the notion that executive privilege will protect people in her shoes from testifying about goings-on that relate to January 6th. So she now faces the prospect that if she simply flouts the committee's request that she appear should it turn into a subpoena, she could find herself just like Steve Bannon indicted, and then in the situation that Mary Trump posits. Typically when you see parents and children involved in criminality, at least in my experience, parents will often bend over backwards to protect their children. This is obviously a family where that dynamic is very different. And if in fact Ivanka is given this choice of testifying truthfully or facing prosecution, I suppose that we'll see how that plays out. But ultimately, the truth has a way of surfacing, and the fact that the committee is at the point where it's willing to speak to Ivanka Trump suggests that they've been very successful with their voluntary interviews. It's unlikely that they're wanting to speak to her just to find out what she knows. Far more likely that although they'd like to know that, they also have a good bit of information that's prepared in a fashion where they can take it to the bank that they're ready to confront her with.
Betsy, I have only a minute left, but I do got to get this in, which is she's not just his daughter. She also worked in the administration. She was a public servant in that capacity. In as much as they want to hear from her as his kid, they want to hear from what she knows as a person who was inside the building, who had pull and sway. Your final thoughts?
The January 6th committee is treating her with an unusual level of politeness and deference. But remember, just from the perspective of what type of job people did, they've already subpoenaed Mark Meadows and referred Mark Meadows to the Justice Department for contempt because he didn't comply with that subpoena. From a legal standpoint, Ivanka Trump is in the same basket that Mark Meadows is in. If the committee feels that it's legally proper and legally defensible for them to issue a subpoena going after Meadows, then the same justification would also apply to the president's daughter. Just because she was a relative of the president's daughter doesn't change the fact that she also was a U.S. government employee who got a government salary, who worked for the U.S. government, doing government work with very detailed knowledge of everything that happened in the Oval Office on January 6th.
It is Monday, the 24th of January of 2022, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Yes, it was a weekend, and, we sliced and diced and repurposed what was left and made it into a gourmet delight for your gourmet pleasure. Indeed. Well, how was your weekend? Lots happened, of course. We still got that loser rattling the cage. And he's got a few million, well, tens of millions, about 70 by last count, of cage rattlers, too. And I don't know what it's going to take. Netroots Radio had reported to Twitter of a Michigan, the chair of the Michigan Republican Party, or is she co-chair? One moment. Let me see if it's here. Let's see. For some reason, I had her off. But, okay, so she is the co-chair of the Michigan GOP. And also leading, Women for Trump. Which tells you all you need to know, okay? And Netroots Radio had reported her for making violent threats by posting, guns and, we're going to get you. And this is what happens when us moms, find out about what our kids are reading in the library. Posting pictures of Sarah Connor from, I think it's actually the second Terminator movie. But regardless, that was reported to Twitter, and Twitter said, no. Are you kidding us? This doesn't violate our terms of use for bullying and harassing and making violent threats and misinformation on medicine. It does, and her page is chock full of all of those violations. And for some reason, because she's the Michigan co-chair, and because she is a leading personage of Women for Trump, they can't sanction her, give her a little notice that maybe what you're doing is over the top. Because I know for a fact that when someone like me, the little guy, as Glenn Greenwald told me before he blocked me, little man. That's what it was. I'm a little man. Well, you haven't seen me in person. I'm not that little. I'm not that big, not that little. Anyway, when someone like us simply just counters the hate, the vitriol, with the most innocuous memes, the most innocuous passive types of pushback. I mean, to the point where I was suspended because I posted a GIF. It's always going to be a GIF. I'm sorry. One of those little short video snippets of the crying teenager from Glee. And they said that was harassing and bullying. And yet, here is this woman, Mayshawn Maddock, saying this is what moms were asking before they knew what their kids were reading in the library. And then she posts what they were after they found out. And one is, tranquil, smiling mom. And then the next one is Sarah Connor, smoking a cigarette, getting ready to blast everything into Kingdom Come. That doesn't violate terms of use. That is not violent bullying threats. Now, of course, I love the fact that these people want to say how our kids are going to be educated, and they don't even know basic American grammar. Us moms. It's we moms, you dimwit Nazi. I I'm just tired of these Nazis trying to take over, and I don't know, it seems to me like they're bringing the level down. I thought they were the master race. If you're the master race, you should at least know the basics. Us moms. Us moms are gonna get you. No, it's we moms. Jeez. God, it just burns me up. We take the time to learn all this stuff, and it's like, oh, you don't need that. Well, how are you going to use that in real life? Well, where are you doing it? This is real life, pal. Now, I should actually be more specific. I wasn't suspended from Twitter for the Glee meme, cheerleader meme. It was Facebook. But still, I had to make a point. Because Twitter is known to let the Nazis slip by. And someone like Driftglass gets suspended for a year or more? Had to come back as, like, I got to tell you, he was a real charming bastard. And then, I don't know, after a long review, they finally let him come back. What was his egregious violation? I'll get it out. It's Monday. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he used an F-bomb when he was referring to, fucking Brooks. Though I don't think that was specifically the one, because he did make mention that he wasn't going to ever mention fucking Brooks again. But, it's hard. It's hard not to. It's always there. Okay, so we got Newt Gingrich basically saying that, we're going to impeach Biden and throw him in jail. What the fuck are you talking about, you monster? This started from your contract on America in the 80s. Motherfucker, excuse my French on Monday mornings, but I'm a little pissed. Mofo started this BS back in the 90s, shutting down the government. I remember that quite well. And why? Because the hippies had taken over. Yeah, well, the plantation owners are not going to be, we're not going to allow it. We're tired of you running the plantation, okay? We're going to break it up, subdivide it, and make it into strip malls. Happy? Jeez, these people. And this guy gets a platform to do this. I really don't remember Sin Q from the Symbionese Liberation Army making, proclamations on Donahue in the day. Let's sit down with Jack Parr. We'll bring Jack Parr back. Sit him down and have him interview Sin Q. Jesus. Well, I think that maybe the network would lose their FCC license, because that's kind of how it worked back in the day. You couldn't do that BS. But now, give Newt Gingrich a platform to talk about breaking up the United States of America, and this guy comes from the old South. There's supposed to be a law against that. Maybe even the unregulated, unfettered cable networks should follow under that law as well. It applies to everyone and everything. Resident or visitor alike, you get the protections and the liabilities. Welcome to America, pal. Well, I suspect it's because we have a lot of, shall we say, good Republicans, like the good Germans of old, embedded throughout our government. And it's going to be hard to purge them because, they're our neighbors. Yeah, well, watch a few Orson Welles movies about what your Nazi neighbor is like. A lot of people did, too. And I'll remind folks once again, Hitler didn't get the idea of Nazism necessarily, because he was, stewing in prison writing Mein Kampf. Structural part of the Nazism aspect. I mean, the idea actually, he got the idea, I'm sure. Well, not I'm sure, but Mussolini created fascism. And the Nazis, turned it around into their own little particular kind, and that's why we call it Nazism. But the idea of the master race and the whole eugenics thing and getting rid of these subhumans, where'd that come from? Yeah, the United States of America. How do you eradicate a continent worth of indigenous peoples populating what you want? What are those people doing living on my land? I'll tell you what they do. Here, have a smallpox blanket. Here, have some guns, too, to retaliate against getting all these smallpox blankets. Oh, we have to build a fort now. Instead of, I don't know, living in harmony, peace, love, and understanding. Yeah, I know there were warring tribes and everybody's human, all right? But if you think property is king, and we're not supposed to have royalty in this society, but apparently property is king, maybe you'd adhere to that intellectual rigor then. Because what we see with a Newt Gingrich and this plantation mentality has nothing to do with the sanctity of property. Well, it's a gambit for unfettered power. All right. I told everybody, these folks have no moral grounding. They'll glom onto anything. They'll side with Putin. And they have. Tucker Carlson giving Putin a platform for the millions of MAGAts out there saying, oh, well, it'd be so much better living with Putin. He's white. Yeah, he is, isn't he? And I got to tell you, he was KGB and he likes the gulags. And you think the Night of the Long Knives and the slow-moving Night of the Long Knives in America is, something to behold. There's a lot of convenient falls from 5-story buildings in Putin's Russia. So I'd be a little careful about who we back. These Republican Nazis are just like the mayor, the politician in Red Dawn. Okay? Sniveling little mofo. And then he gets put up towards the rock pile. First he had to go witness it. Kind of had a little, throw up in his throat when it happened because it was women and children too, But everybody thinks they're going to escape the rock pile if they just, help the powers that be. Nope. They have no compunction for compassion. That's why they're Nazis. I know I'm melding a lot of different kinds of political ideologies here when we think about Putin, because he's got a particular kind of mob rule, mobster. But I love how the American maggot thinks, oh, yeah, that's a good guy to follow. He's a mobster. Yeah, well, we're not judging you by the color of your skin, pal, but by the content of your character. What's on the menu here in the Bistro Cafe as we start off? And we've been going for a little bit here. Yes, the House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack confirmed it is in talks with former Attorney General Bill Barr. Put him under oath. That's the only thing that matters. Continuing here on this fantastic River City Hash Mondays, MAGAts are now whining that the allocating of scarce COVID-19 treatments discriminates against white people. Not only in DeSantis' Florida do you have to take care not to make a white person uncomfortable, about the fact that they come from a DNA heritage of plantation owners. Oh, I feel uncomfortable about that. Can I sue? Can they sue Ancestry.com for the company making them uncomfortable because their DNA proved that they were, plantation owners back in the day? Well, not only that, but Trump is furthering this conspiracy theory that if you're not white, you have to get to the back of the line. I always love whenever they feel like they have to suffer one iota fraction of what they've given out in terms of discrimination, hate, and bigotry. If they have to experience just a fraction of that, the whole world has to come to a stop. We got to join Putin. What else is on the rest of the menu? Well, small towns push back against Trump's bogus census undercounts. And Virginia's new Republican Attorney General has fired lawyers for two of the state's large public universities, one on leave to work as counsel for the January 6th insurrection investigation. Convenient, isn't it? After the break, we move to the chef's table, where a well-known Turkish journalist has been jailed for insulting Erdogan. And the UK warned Russia it will face severe sanctions if it puts a puppet regime in Ukraine. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is the chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly, for doing so. To the left of the chat room link across the page, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, as some have, and if you could afford an espresso type coffee drink, for instance, thank you, Driftglass and Blue Gal, for coming up with that. If you could afford that, and if you could send those funds our way once a month, it helps us pay our bills. And I got to tell you, there's still, I don't know, a universal truth. If you pay your bills, a lot of times you can slip under the radar, and that's what we're doing, and we're continuing this resistance against the dark forces arrayed against the United States of America and democracy itself. And with your great generosity, we've been able to do so. And thank you for generosity in the future, because we're not giving up. No way. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, you can do so at Netroots Radio. How simple is that? I'll tell you why, because, or how. It's because Tom takes care of that. And, hey, thank you, Tom, for making simple is better. Follow me on Twitter, no matter how complex that might be. And you can do that at Justice Putnam. I incidentally post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that linked up on social media platforms like Twitter and others. I try at least 10 minutes before showtime, sometimes during the opening clip, Sometimes. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., etc., etc. Also, our deep archive for, that we had to take off some of the syndicated service there to free up room for the account. Yeah, they're trying to push for more money, and I guess that's how businesses work. I can't fault them. But anyway, you can find the deep archive at the Internet Archive, and links are provided. I guess I should get that up on, or have Tom get that up on the homepage, and we'll do that at some point real soon. Otherwise, we'll provide links on social media and other places that we hope that you find. Okay. Little personal medical update. My knee isn't nearly as bad, though it just is a reminder I need to take care. And I guess I have to consider osteoarthritis as something that might be a bit severe. Isn't that weird? Jeez. I'm not supposed to be decaying. None of us think we will, and all of us do. So what? Well, I'll tell you what. Let's tuck into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of this salon that we call West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And it is out of the Associated Press by Todd Richmond. Some conservatives are taking aim at policies that allow doctors to consider race as a risk factor when allocating scarce COVID-19 treatments, saying the protocols discriminate against white people. Well, if your white people had taken heed, we wouldn't be where we are now, would we? And this behavior is exactly the behavior that we predicted would happen. It always is. If you'd watched Twilight Zone and taken heed, even Outer Limits, same sort of scenarios were all addressed in black and white even. Damn it. These people. The wave of infections brought on by the Omicron variant and a shortage of treatments that have focused attention on the policies. Medical experts say the opposition is misleading. Health officials have long said there is a strong case for considering race as one of many risk factors in treatment decisions, and there is no evidence that race alone is being used to decide who gets medicine. What cracks me up is that for generations and generations and generations, there was no consideration of race as any kind of factor in diagnoses, and diagnoses would be consistently wrong. I know there's a big silence there, but I'm just trying to steel my nerves. Breathe deeply, as the Zen Buddhist monk who just recently passed would say. Breathe deeply and consciously. Calm yourself. I'm a bit angry because since these people have perpetuated this lie, our system is at a breaking point, and I wonder if that's on purpose. Is there some sort of master plan written in Cyrillic? Maybe. I'm just being rhetorical, but I'm just saying. Back to the article at hand. Medical experts, The issue came to the forefront last week when Fox host Tucker Carlson, Putin Toady Carlson, former President Trump and Republican Rubio jumped on the policies. In recent days, the conservative law firms have pressured a Missouri-based healthcare system, Minnesota and Utah, to drop their protocols and sue New York State over allocation guidelines or scoring systems that include race as a risk factor. Well, you're going to have to go to the actuaries at every insurance company, too. Yeah, stupid Nazis. Bigots, too. J.P. Leader, a senior fellow in the Division of Health Policy and Management at the University of Minnesota, who helped develop the state's allocation criteria, noted that prioritization has been going on for some time because there are not enough treatments to go around. You have to pick who comes first, leaders said. The problem is we have extremely conclusive evidence that minorities across the U.S. are having worse COVID outcomes compared to white folks. Sometimes it's acceptable to consider things like race and ethnicity when making decisions about when resources get allocated at a societal level. In other words, the MAGAs are full of Karens and Kens, and they want what you have, and they're going to just take it from you. That's why they always complain that something's being taken from them, because they're being prevented from taking it from you. Considerable evidence suggests that COVID-19 has hit certain racial and ethnic groups harder than whites. Research shows that people of color are at a higher risk of severe illness, are more likely to be hospitalized, and are dying from COVID-19 at younger ages. Well, that's the reason this has all been going on for so long. The only reason they fought against any of this for them is because they thought it only happened to those people. And now that they're finding out that those people are getting priority on treatment, we wanted these people dead. Dead. That's why we're talking human rights violations on the level of an attempted genocide. I'd like to see that at The Hague. Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is out of the Associated Press by Mike Snyder. When officials in Chester, Georgia heard that the 2020 census had pegged their small town at 525 people, their jaws dropped. They believed the town was almost triple that size and feared an inaccurate number could force them to make budget cuts. I said, "Whoa, that's not right," City Clerk Melanie McCook said. "The first thing I thought is, this is going to affect our revenues greatly." Chester and two other small rural municipalities in Georgia are the first communities in the U.S. to challenge the accuracy of their numbers from the once-a-decade headcount. Successful challenges are scant, but the outcome could determine whether Chester, the city of Glenville, and White County get their fair share when it comes to the distribution of $1.5 trillion in annual federal funding. In the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, White County officials were stunned when the 2020 census said their county had 28,003 residents. A Census Bureau estimate from 2019 had put the county's population at almost 31,000. The county is home to the town of Helen, a tourist draw modeled on a Bavarian alpine village. Well, click my heels. An analysis of the George Mountains Regional Commission, a nonprofit agency that provides planning help to communities in the region, said half of the county's census blocks had incorrect housing counts. Although the 2020 census put the number of homes at 13,535, it should have been 15,286, according to the analysis. Both Glenville and Chester are home to state prisons, which became among the most difficult places to count, along with college dorms, nursing homes, and military barracks. How convenient. As the coronavirus spread throughout the U.S. during crucial weeks for the census in the spring of 2020. Students were sent home from campuses, and prisons and nursing homes went into lockdowns when those residents were supposed to be counted. In Georgia, inmates are supposed to be counted when they are imprisoned, About a dozen other states are planning to count prisoners at their home address when it comes to drawing political districts. Once again, how convenient. Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays is by anonymous staff at the Associated Press. Virginia's new Attorney General, Jason Myers, has fired lawyers from 2 large public universities, marking more significant changes as the Republican ascends to his new job. Tim Heaphy, counsel for the University of Virginia, and George Mason University counsel Brian Walter have been let go. Myers' spokesperson, Victoria LaSavita, told the Washington Post about those removals. School counsel within Virginia's public colleges and universities are appointed by the Attorney General. Heaphy, who along with UVA also confirmed his removal, worked at the school for about 3 years. He was on leave from the job to work as the top investigator for the U.S. House of Representatives panel investigating the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol. LaSavita said Heaphy's firing had nothing to do with that investigative role. Rather, she said in a statement that he was a controversial hire, and Myers' Democratic predecessor, Mark Herring, had excluded many qualified internal candidates when he brought this particular university counsel. He brought in that particular university counsel. Oh, it's not because he's on the panel investigating the insurrection. It's because he's a Democrat. Michael Kelly, Herring's former chief of staff, and said LaSavita's characterization of Heaphy's hiring was inaccurate. Heaphy was a well-qualified attorney with much experience and the first choice of UVA's administration. Far from being controversial, his hire was celebrated by the university community and leadership, Kelly wrote. Referencing Walter's firing, according to the newspaper, LaSavita said it is common for an incoming attorney general to appoint counsel that shares its philosophy and legal approach. Both Heaphy and Walter are Democrats. LaSavita did not say whether other counsels at Virginia's public colleges and universities had been let go. A former U.S. attorney for the Washington District of Virginia, Heaphy was hired by UVA in 2018. Earlier, he had conducted an independent investigation of the Unite the Right rally. Get rid of everybody who's investigating the Nazis. How convenient. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, more moan than scream. The Those of us old enough to remember the original Scream should recall that one reason it worked was that it flipped the horror genre on its head. Kevin Williamson's witty writing and the late horror legend Wes Craven's directing resulted in a self-deprecating film. It was fresh, fun, and its nod to the rules of horror recited by a character, as well as the sequel's movie within a movie, made the franchise meta before the term existed. However, after the third one, the movies fell into another horror movie cliche, tired and predictable. Even die-hard fans choked on the fourth one from 2011. This fifth one isn't officially called 5. It's not a sequel or reboot, but rather, as new character Mindy Meeks Martin explains, it's a requel. We have legacy characters and the backstory, but it's meant to launch off in new directions. Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, and David Arquette are back to reprise their roles as Sidney Prescott, Gale Weathers, and Dewey Riley. They're older and have grown apart, but they reunite when yet another killer in the trademark Ghostface mask starts killing kids. Early on, it's made clear that a focus is going to be on the connection between this new killer and the original. While it's nice to see the legacy actors and characters, the best thing is seeing the original murder house, which arguably was as much of a character as any of the people in the original. The new movie doesn't quite measure up. Maybe it never could. While there are some decent jump tricks and suspense, plus a notable performance by Jack Quaid, this fifth Scream cries out for the directing and writing of Craven and Williamson, respectively. All said, though, it works for the fans and probably revives the franchise. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is an important message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. When it snows this winter, make sure you clear more than your driveway. Before you hit the road and before you get in the driver's seat, check to be sure that your vehicle's tailpipe is clear of snow. If the tailpipe is blocked, carbon monoxide, an odorless, colorless, and deadly gas produced by your engine can build up quickly inside your vehicle, poisoning anyone inside. To learn more, call 1-800-CDC-INFO. That's 1-800-232-4636.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Our society has coined expressions like philanthropist to encourage and hail people's charitable spirit. Look on the flip side of that shiny coin of generosity, however, and you'll find that its base substance is societal selfishness. After all, the need for charity only exists because we're tolerating intentional injustices and widespread inequality created by power elites. A society as supremely wealthy as ours ought not be relegating needy families and essential components of the common good to the whims of a few rich philanthropists. Yes, corporate and individual donations can help at the margins, but they don't fix anything. Thus, food banks, health clinics, etc. must constantly scrounge for more charity, while big donors have their charitable spirit subsidized with tax breaks that siphon money from our public treasury. Especially offensive to me is the common grandiose assertion by fat cat donors that charity is their way of, quote, giving back to society. Hello? If they can give so much, it's probably because they've been taking too much. As business columnist Andrew Ross Sorkin points out, all too often, charitable gifts are used to make up for the failure of companies to pay people a living wage and treat their workers with dignity. It's not just the unemployed who rely on food banks, but janitors, nannies, Uber drivers, checkout clerks, and others who work full-time but are so poorly paid they can't make ends meet. That's not a sad charity case, but a matter of criminal exploitation by wealthy elites. And the charitable thing to do is to outlaw it and require a living wage for all. This is Jim Hightower saying, as Sorkin puts it, the aim should be to create a society where we don't need places like food banks. We should be trying to put the food banks out of business.
You are listening to 60 Second Civics from the Center for Civic Education. I'm Mark Gage. On the night of March 5th, 1770, a mob of men and boys in Boston began taunting a British sentry standing guard at the city's customs house. When 8 British soldiers came to the sentry's aid, a riot broke out and shots were fired. 4 colonists were killed, 6 were wounded, and another would die 4 days later. The next day, British troops were withdrawn from the center of Boston to a fort on Castle Island in Boston Harbor. The British soldiers who allegedly fired the shots were indicted for murder. Colonists such as Paul Revere used the Boston Massacre to harden public opinion against the British. Within days, he circulated a print depicting the episode as a slaughter of innocent colonists by British tyrants. Samuel Adams called the event bloody butchery. But John Adams, who would later become the second American president, agreed to defend the British soldiers. More on that in tomorrow's episode. 60 Second Civics, where civic education only takes a minute.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1950. The minimum wage in the United States was raised to 75 cents an hour. This move nearly doubled the minimum wage from the previous 40 cents an hour. More than 22 million people were directly eligible for the wage increase. In his statement on the change, President Harry S. Truman declared, "It is a measure dictated by social justice. It adds to our economic strength. It is founded on the belief that full human dignity requires at least a minimum level of economic sufficiency and security." If the minimum wage had kept pace with inflation since 1950, it would now be over $10 an hour. The last time the federal government raised the minimum wage was 2009. It currently stands at a meager $7.25 an hour. Given the overwhelming Republican control of Congress and the enormous cash outlays by corporate lobbyist groups like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the National Restaurant Association, and others, it's doubtful that Congress will take up the question of raising the minimum wage anytime soon. Yet, next year, 21 states will raise their minimum wage. More than 3 million people will see a raise because of the state's measures. In 4 states, Alaska, Arkansas, Nebraska, and South Dakota, voters passed ballot measures to raise the minimum wage. In total, 29 states in the District of Columbia will have a higher minimum wage than the federal level. Washington State will have the highest state minimum wage at $9.47 per hour. Yet most states still lag well behind inflation. If the minimum wage is a measure dictated by social justice, where do we as a nation measure up? And what of Truman's call for human dignity? To date, only 2 presidents have failed to raise the minimum wage since its inception: Republican Ronald Reagan and Democrat Barack Obama. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 28 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high of around 55 to 58, and that'll be cooler than we had yesterday. Foggy conditions prevail, mostly cloudy later on, and then sunshine in the afternoon, and winds will be light and variable. Generally clear tonight with lows in the low 30s, winds light and variable, and sunny tomorrow with highs in the upper 50s. Confirmed cases of coronavirus since early Friday now stand at 344,084 confirmed cases, and we are continuing to rise in this part of Oregon and the nation, and our deceased have also increased to 417. We're going to go right into weather from around the world, and weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. London is 40 degrees and cloudy. Paris is 44 and sunny. Rome is 56 and fair. Kyiv is 23 and mostly cloudy. Kabul is 15 degrees and clear. Hong Kong is 63 and cloudy. Tokyo is 38 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 72 degrees and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 45 degrees and fair. And New York is a freezing 27 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Staff at the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A well-known Turkish journalist has been jailed pending a trial for insulting Erdogan, her lawyer said. Sadif Kabas was taken into custody after she cited a proverb on television and social media referring to an ox. Under the insult law, tens of thousands have been prosecuted for targeting Erdogan since he became president in 2014 after more than a decade as prime minister. Her lawyer tweeted that she had been formally arrested during an appearance in court in Istanbul on Saturday. The judge accepted the prosecution argument that she posed a flight risk. Kabas, age 53, has hosted a series of high-profile TV shows over a career spanning 3 decades. She was detained by police at her home in Istanbul early Saturday following her remarks on Tele1 and Twitter. Government figures condemned Kabas while opposition politicians defended her right to free speech. Opposition party leader Meral Akşener used a hashtag in support of Kabas. This mindset will go and justice will again come to Turkey, she wrote. The charge of insulting the president carries a maximum 4-year prison term.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
David Shepardson and Paul Sandel of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The U.S. State Department announced yesterday, Sunday, it was ordering diplomats and family members to leave Ukraine as President Joe Biden weighed options for boosting America's military assets in Eastern Europe to counter a buildup of Russian troops. The order, which also allowed U.S. diplomats stationed at the embassy in the Ukrainian capital Kyiv to leave voluntarily, was one of the clearest signs yet that American officials are bracing for an aggressive Russian move in the region. Military action by Russia could come at any time, the U.S. Embassy said in a statement. Officials will not be in a position to evacuate American citizens in such a contingency, so U.S. citizens currently present in Ukraine should plan accordingly, it said. Ukrainian Foreign Ministry said in a statement that it considered the move as premature and a manifestation of excessive caution. Tensions in Ukraine have been increasing for months after the Kremlin massed some 100,000 troops near the borders, a dramatic buildup, the West said, is preparation for a war to prevent Ukraine from ever joining the NATO Western Security Alliance. The Kremlin has repeatedly denied planning to invade, but the Russian military already tore off a chunk of Ukrainian territory when it seized Crimea and backed separatist forces who took control of large parts of eastern Ukraine 8 years ago. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio broadcasts on, and we will meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin l'âge tombe, nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. De novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.